Welcome to the VG Lab podcast, where we discuss engineering concepts and applications found in everyday life. Hello, my name is Eric Vasquez. I am an associate professor in the Department of Chemical and Materials Engineering at the University of Dayton. I'm also doing this as part of my teaching and research at the university. Today, we have our guest, Cassie Austin, and she will introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Cassie Austin. I work currently as the Sustainability Project Coordinator in the Hanley Sustainability Institute here at the University of Dayton.
Great. Thanks for being with us here today.
This
is for my Chemical Behavior of Materials course, and we're going to talk about an important topic, which is recycling.
Yeah.
How do you define recycling?
So I did my research a little bit before this, so I have a written definition, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what I think recycling is. So I have the action or process of converting items back into raw materials so that new products can be made. So at its most basic form is just taking items, basic materials, and converting them into something new. So basically, reusing them. But when I think about recycling personally, I kind of open up the idea also of like reuse and like reducing our waste as well. I think those go hand in hand. If you ever hear reduce, reuse, recycle, I like to talk about them all as a whole because they kind of all go into how to more sustainably manage our waste.
Very good. Yes, managing sustainably can be challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about the reuse as well, right? So what type of materials are the most recyclable ones, or how does that work?
Yeah, so some of the most recyclable materials, I'll start with the best one to recycle, is actually aluminum or other metals such as tin or steel. So basically your aluminum soda cans, pop cans, soup cans, anything like that. That is because metal can be melted down and completely turned back into the same material. So it's essentially 100% recyclable. That can that had your Coke in it can be another similar can later down the line. That isn't true for all items that can be recycled. But another one that's fairly recyclable as well is cardboard, just because it's made of like durable paper fibers, and then those can easily be turned into a different paper product. But typically, it's not turned back into a cardboard box. It can be turned into something like that's less durable, if that makes sense. So similar to that with paper, those recycled items kind of get downcycled in a way. That's similar with plastics as well. So things like your water bottle, plastic water bottle. When you recycle that, it doesn't turn back into a plastic water bottle. It's turned into something else that you can use plastic for.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so recycling here at the university has taken up some time now, right? But there are some efforts. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about what are the efforts that the Hanley Sustainability Institute leads regarding to recycling.
For sure. So here on campus, there's a lot of recycling bins around. You probably see them. A lot of them are paired right next to a trash can, making it easy to recycle. But a lot of times people are confused about what can be recycled. So I actually brought my little worksheet today about what is accepted here on campus that can be recycled, as well as in the Dayton community. Our waste hauler here is Rumpke Waste and Recycling. They haul away both our trash and recycling from campus. So they have a nice little sheet that's online that tells you exactly what can be recycled. So I'll read them out for you here. Our first one is paper. And if you can look at the picture of it at some point, it shows all different types of paper. So some things that are on the picture here, cardboard, a paper bag, paper board material, which would be like your cereal box, your Cheez-It box, something like that. I see a picture of a phone book, if anyone has a phone book still. Even pizza boxes, your toilet paper rolls, newspaper, and then your regular like printer paper. So that all falls within the paper category. Something new that Rumpke started accepting more recently to be recycled is your paper coffee cups as well. So even those can go in the recycling bin. The next category Rumpke calls metal cans and cups. So I talked about, how those are kind of one of the best things to recycle. And so they say the word metal because they're talking about both aluminum, tin, and steel cans, cups. That one's a pretty basic category. Other one I have here is glass bottles and jars. So any sort of color, it doesn't have to be separated. So pickle jars, jam jars, big like green glass bottles, anything like that can all be recycled. Another category is cartons. They're kind of like paper-like, but they have them as a separate one. So like juice boxes, milk cartons, something maybe more that you see more often is like the cartons of soup or chicken broth or something. And then the last one I saved for last because it's kind of confusing. The most confusing is the plastics. And we were just chatting about this beforehand about what can be recycled in plastics. And it's different anywhere you might go. It just depends on what your recycler can accept. So here with Rumpke, they can accept bottles, jugs, tubs, and cups. So if people are familiar with the little recycling symbol on the bottom of plastics or somewhere hidden on plastics that has a number inside, a lot of times it's really hard to see. But rather than looking for one of those items, they just recommend to look at the shape of the item. That's because the shape of those items are typically made of plastic material that they can recycle. So if we're talking about numbers, it's likely number 1, 2, and 3, which are, I don't know all the language for what the names of the plastics are called, but those are the kind of the most recyclable plastics. So some of the pictures here I'll read out real quick are detergent bottles, milk bottles or jugs, and then I already talked about water, like water bottles or soda bottles, even like shampoo bottles, yogurt containers, butter containers. So the list goes on and on. So going through that, we know that plastic recycling, but recycling in general can be confusing. So your original question was, what are we doing here at UD? First of all, we're just trying to educate people on what can be recycled. That includes working on some more signage around campus. So you see a recycling bin, but it might not tell you everything I just read out, exactly what to recycle. So we're working both on bins all over campuses, in classrooms, and most recently in residence halls about putting out permanent signage so that people who want to recycle can. And then I mentioned at the very beginning as well, like working on more reduce and reuse efforts too. So something that dining services on campus does is reusable to-go containers. So rather than taking an item to go in like a disposable container, you can ask for one of their reusable ones, and they're green and they're kind of see-through, and then you can get your food, eat it, and then you can return it to one of the return bins on campus and not have to throw away that piece of cardboard at the end of your meal.
That sounds pretty good for innovation efforts, right? It takes time for sure.
Right.
Also, recently I saw through HSI, there was a visit to a plant in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Recycling and Reuse Hub.
Yeah.
How was your experience looking at this at a larger scale, right? Like how do they process materials? They have saved, it was founded in 2020, this nonprofit, I believe, and they have diverted several tons of waste since then. So what was your experience going to an industrial scale plant?
Yeah. So HSI has done a few field trips to places like this. So the one that the Cincinnati Reuse and Recycling Hub, they actually take hard to recycle items and collect those. and then sell them to different people who can process that material. So this is like separate than the Rumpke recycling facility, but I have visited Rumpke as well, where basically they process all the materials that go into our bins on campus or at home. But the other one, the reuse and recycling hub, so they do hard to recycle items that can't go in our regular bins. They do special collections as well as reuse there. So items like art supplies or building supplies, things you might, like tiles or things you might use for like a home improvement project, they keep those, and then all those items are available for people to come in and take them for free and reuse them again. So they're kind of just holding on to some items that people might need sometimes, and then giving them away for free so they don't go into the landfill. And then some of the hard to recycle items would be like your plastic films, plastic bags, maybe like your chip bags. So I mentioned those would not be recyclable with Rumpke, so they can go to that separate facility. Of course, we don't live in Cincinnati, so it is a bit of a haul to go there, but we're working here at UD to see if we could do other special collections like that, like with plastic bags or something, so they can go somewhere and be reused rather than going to the landfill.
Very good, very good. So do they do any kind of work like in computers? Computers have a lot of precious metals. We were reading about it. Mm-hmm. And people usually do not recycle on those, right? So hard to recycle materials. Though Cincinnati has like partnerships with people who they can use the products or...
Yeah, the Recycle and Reuse Hub, they partner with different organizations that actually process the material. So they are more of just like a collection hub, and then have different partnerships with other people. So when they collect it, they bale it, they make sure it's not contaminated, doesn't have other different types of materials, and they can sell it to people who actually break it down or process it.
Very good. So thank you for sharing that. So as a society, besides UD, what do you think are some of the challenges that we face to help people recycle more?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned already, education about recycling, but again, opening up that idea of also we need to be reducing our waste in the first place, or reusing things rather than just calling them waste. We live in a society, especially here in the U.S., of like high consumerism, overconsumption of items. A lot of cheap items are made to be used once and thrown away, or just break really easily. And a lot of times those items are not easily recyclable either. So they're not made of those high quality plastics that can go to recycling anyways. So another thing we can think about is asking those companies to actually create items that can be recycled or reused or repaired. It is an individual, as an individual, it's important to recycle, but if those materials aren't recyclable in the first place, then it's up to the companies and big organizations to actually create items that can go somewhere after their first use. I also think just people have a distrust of recycling. It's overwhelming about what can be recycled. And people often, we call it wish cycling. So you want something to be recyclable. If you throw it in the bin, you're hoping it will be. That actually causes issues when it actually goes to the sorting plant, because that stuff has to go into the trash, and they have to take more effort and labor to actually remove those items and take out the items that you can actually recycle. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of cool technologies in a recycling sorting facility, including like magnets to separate out the metals or different, I guess, technologies that use like visual
Sorting.
sorting to actually like look and see, hey, that's that type of plastic, and to like pull it out and put it separate. So the more items that are in there that shouldn't be in there might confuse like their systems and makes it harder to get clean, good recycling.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the rethink, reuse, how we as a society consume products is a difficult topic, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the United States. What happens to other countries? Are you familiar with any different practices in other countries besides the U.S.?
Yeah, a little bit. So I know that there's a lot of other countries who are doing much better than the United States in terms of recycling and recycling rates. Part of that is that they have, I know some other countries that have a lot more bins. So here we have one bin typically, or maybe you see two that says like paper and then all other recycling. So in other countries, they ask the actual person at the bin to sort before it goes to the facility. That saves a lot of time and effort, like when it gets transported to the facility, if it's already pre-sorted. But that does cause more maybe confusion on the user in the first place. It might discourage recycling. But that is one tactic I've seen. So you'd show up at the bin and you'd see glass, paper, metal, plastic, everything already pre-laid out rather than one bin.
Very good. Yes, having that sort of preliminary, I'm sure it saves a lot of efforts for the recycling companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. So recently we read in class one paper one study that highlighted how some of this plastic ends in the rivers first, and then they go into the ocean. There is actually a big patch of plastic in the ocean, the Great Pacific Patch. What are your thoughts on this type of plastic going in instead of landfills or recycling facilities and ending up in the ocean? And what can you tell us about those microplastics too?
Yeah. So plastic, when it goes into the environment and starts to degrade or break down, it essentially will never, it's not biodegradable, so it won't turn back into something that can go in the soil, basically. It keeps breaking down into smaller and smaller plastics, and also known as microplastics. And we know that these can end up in our waterways and end up in our bodies, in animals, everywhere kind of in the environment. It's obviously a big problem. Another way that microplastics enter into the waterways is actually through like your washing machine. So if you have clothing that's made of plastics, which a lot of our clothing is made of different type of synthetic plastics, such as nylon or something. So like workout clothing, all of that's made of like plastic-like material that can actually just get directly washed away through into our waterways as well. And I know the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, if you did watch that video, it's kind of a scary thing to know about. And it can be kind of really overwhelming, like, well, what can I do about that? And I think just learning more is going to help you make better and more conscious decisions about what you're using and the importance of recycling or disposing your waste in a sustainable way. Landfills are heavily engineered. They're not like how they, I guess, were originally designed, like a dump. We're not just dumping them into the dirt. They're heavily engineered to protect away from our water sources. So, even picking up trash and trash that might be in the environment or outside, putting it in the trash, disposing it properly is going to even help reduce that pollution in our waterways.
Very good, very good. Yes, it's definitely something that we as society have to think about, right? That not only waste can come from anything, even clothes. I wasn't aware of that, but washings is something is ever done at every household, right? And we don't think on that. So any last other comments you have or about this whole recycling topic or anything else you would like to add?
Sure. I think just learn more about, you can start with learn more about what to recycle. Learn more about how you can essentially vote with your dollar. You can try to purchase things that are made from better materials, more durable materials, more recyclable materials. And then as well as just putting pressures on companies to actually follow through with their sustainability goals that they have set to actually provide us with items that we can responsibly use as consumers, and just talk about it and tell other people about this because it affects all of us, whether you like it or not. It's just a really important topic to talk about.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope my students learn a lot about how recycling happens, not only at the university, but also at a local and even in Cincinnati areas, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for being here and for being part of this podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much.